Next question, scheduled question. It's from Bev Wright.
Mr Abbott has stated that once elected to government, he will introduce his direct action climate policy after repealing the carbon tax. One of his direct action plans is to provide $1.2 billion per annum until 2020 to major companies and industries as an incentive for them to cut emissions. Why? It seems to me that under the Coalition's direct action policy, a payment totalling $8.4 billion will be paid by Australian taxpayers over 7 years to get major industries to stop polluting. Isn't this some sort of contradiction?
Okay, just before you answer, the first, for some people who didn't hear the beginning of that, the first part of that question was Mr Abbott has stated that once elected to government, he will introduce his direct action climate policy. The question is obviously about that. Sophie.
And the first thing he will do is repeal the carbon tax. He has said that. The objective is to do something practical that will work. And when scientists have assessed whether a carbon tax will work or direct action will work, we see around the world direct action being taken up by a lot of countries. And what our direct action plan is about is providing incentives for industry to do the right thing. And we know they do because we've seen them voluntarily reduce their emissions. For example, in the state of Victoria, where I come from, industry has reduced their emissions by 33% since 1990. Aluminium smelting, Alcoa's aluminium smelting, has reduced its emissions since 1990 by over 60%. Cement has done it by 24% since 1990. So we know that companies are prepared to reduce their emissions, and they've done that voluntarily. And we don't believe that by exporting our emissions to other countries, that's going to do anything for worldwide emissions. This is the whole point. There is no point closing down industry in Australia that will pop up somewhere else, because that's not going to reduce worldwide emissions.
There hasn't been a lot of scrutiny of the Coalition's direct action policy. Do you agree with the figures there, that it's going to be the government paying $8.4 billion to polluters?
I haven't seen the latest projections up to those, the forward estimates, but we do have...
That was in the question, that's all.
Oh, that was in the question.
Yeah.
Well, I'll have to have a look at your calculations. But it is a significant package, and we've got a package over the forward estimates. And it's a significant package because we're fed income about it. We want to provide
Can I just make
income
one
estimates.
point? And one person who has scrutinised it quite closely is your former leader, Malcolm Turnbull, who has said this: a direct action policy where industry was freely available to pollute and the government was spending more and more taxpayers' money to offset it would become a very expensive charge on the budget in the years ahead. Is he right? Yes.
Tony, if you're asking the Australian people to judge, if you're asking the Australian people to judge which party, the Labor Party or the Liberal Party, can balance this country's budgets, I think you'll get an overwhelming response from the Australian people.
No, I wasn't asking that at all. I was asking what you thought about Malcolm Turnbull's assessment of your policy.
Well, Malcolm Turnbull supports the policy, and Tony Abbott's the leader, and we will on day one repeal the carbon tax and start paying back the billions of dollars in debt that this absolutely corrupt, incompetent government has burdened future generations with.
Okay, Lenore Taylor first.
So it's true what Sophie says, that there are countries around the world who are trying to use direct action, which is sort of a shorthand way for saying regulation, maybe government grants, maybe competitive grants programs. But I don't think there is anywhere that is suggesting, as the Coalition is implicitly suggesting, that you can do it almost pain-free. Tony Abbott is saying now, I think, that in fact we don't need to shut any brown coal-fired generators. We could in fact build more brown coal-fired generators. We don't need to change the way we generate electricity at all. In fact, as I understand direct action, he thinks 60% of our emission reductions, the agreed emission reductions between the major parties, should come from soil carbon. Now, soil carbon may be a good place to try to reduce emissions, but it isn't the solution to the problem. And it's kind of like those late night diet ads. You know, you can eat chocolate cake all day and then you just pop a pill or put some wibbly thing around your waist and the problem will go away. It's not going to go away unless we actually directly address the problem at source. As to the question, as I understand Sophie's policy, it proposes to pay $10.5 billion out over 10 years, and 60% of that goes to soil carbon alone. So I don't really think that they could possibly be paying $8.4 billion to industry, because they have to pay the farmers something for changing what they do if that's how they think they're going to fix the problem.
No, let's go to Grahame Morris first to get his response. So, do you think the direct action policy is something that will just quietly fade away once the coalition's in government, or will it be...
Presumably, from what you're saying, you think it should.
No, Tony, I don't. I am a great believer that Australians, and people generally, but particularly Australians, react better to an incentive than they do to a threat of a kick in the head.
But you said you didn't believe in global warming, so why should they pay $10.5 billion to solve it?
But it's yeah, I'm not writing the policy.
So assuming you were writing the policy, you'd write that policy out of it, would you?
I'd be a bit softer. But I still cannot see why Australia is leading the charge. Tony Abbott is sort of a fix-it man, an incentive man. You give people an incentive to react properly. And Minister, I still don't understand why on earth you are setting this at $32 a tonne instead of, say, 5 or 6, which I think you'd have gone away with.
We're going to get the figures correct first, so...
all right, 23.
Yeah. Thank you. This is great policy making, you see here, yeah?
You can make a comment.
So why did you say before the election you wouldn't have a carbon tax? Why did you say
Very
that?
nice, lovely. Okay. Let me just... Can I just say...
how did you make
as
your
I
policy?
said before, no policy is without cost. And the question that's been asked is a good one, because it's actually $48 billion on our costing to go through to 2020 to do what Tony Abbott is suggesting his plan would involve. That's to deploy solar panels, to plant trees, and it'd have to be planted over an area the size of Tasmania and Victoria combined, and to buy emissions, that is to pay large polluters to reduce their pollution. Guess who pays? Guess what carbon tax that's going to cost you? About $1,300 a household by the year 2020. There is no way to tackle this problem with no cost. What you've got to do it is at the lowest cost. And what our policy is doing, what has been implemented now, is asking the largest greenhouse gas emitters in the economy to buy a permit for each tonne of greenhouse gas that they produce. We're taking that revenue and we're paying it to households. We're not doing what Tony Abbott's suggesting, taking it from households and giving it to polluters. Quite the reverse.
Okay.
And it's time that that was exposed.
We've got some more